I should have married Frank. My wife screamed those words at me across our dinner table. For years, she had been convinced that he was her lost ticket, her one-way pass to a life of luxury and excitement that she believed I could never provide. What she didn't know is what Frank truly thought of her. So I did something she never expected. I picked up my phone and called his mother, and the truth I uncovered, it was so brutal, so devastating. She couldn't even look at me. She just ran. This story is about the exact moment my entire marriage shattered into a million pieces. You're going to want to hear what happened next. So please, like this video, subscribe to Inspiration Seeker, and tell us in the comments if you've ever discovered a hard truth that changed everything. Now let's begin. The silence in our Denver home wasn't the peaceful kind. It was heavy, suffocating. It was a kind of quiet that feels like the air right before a violent hailstorm, where you can feel the pressure changing in your ears. It had been this way for months? No, if I'm being honest, it was probably years. My name is Stephen. By trade, I'm a structural engineer. I spend my days calculating stress loads, designing foundations, and building things that are meant to last. Things people can rely on. My wife, Elizabeth, well, she sells things. High-end real estate, to be exact. She spends her days painting pictures of perfect lives for other people, walking them through empty rooms and convincing them of their potential. Lately, it felt like she was constantly trying to sell me on the idea that our life, the one we'd built, was a complete teardown. Tonight, the silence was a physical presence at our dinner table. It clung to the food I had grilled, making it tasteless. I watched her across the expensive, reclaimed oak table she'd insisted we buy last fall. Her fork just pushed a piece of pasta salad around her plate, a small, frustrated, repetitive motion. She wasn't really here. She was lost, her face illuminated by the bright, cold light of her phone. A sigh escaped her. It was a sharp, impatient sound that cut right through me. I didn't even have to look up. I knew exactly what she was seeing. It was always the same. One of her old college friends, maybe Janet or perhaps Diane, posting from a yacht in Greece, clinking champagne glasses. Or someone else showing off a brand new Tesla, the keys dangling from a perfectly manicured hand. Another post, another update, another sharp reminder of the life she felt she'd been cheated out of. I cleared my throat, a weak attempt to anchor her in the present, in the room with me. We finally solved that load-bearing issue on the downtown high-rise today. I offered, trying to inject some enthusiasm into my voice. It was a complex fix. The whole team was stumped for a week. I'm actually really proud of it. Elizabeth just hummed, a low, dismissive sound that told me she hadn't heard a single word I said. That's nice, honey, she murmured. Her thumb was still flicking up the screen, chasing a life that wasn't hers. Nice. That was her word for me. My job was nice. Our home was nice. Our marriage was nice. It was the faintest praise possible, a verbal pat on the head for a dog that did a simple trick, a familiar, hot knot tighten in my stomach. I was tired of being nice. I was tired of competing with the ghosts on her phone. I didn't know it then, but sitting there at that cold table, I realized nice was about to end for good. I looked at her, at the top of her head bent over that glowing screen. I felt that familiar itch of frustration, that desperate need to just connect, to break through the glass wall she'd built around herself. My eyes scanned the kitchen counter, cluttered with the day's mail, junk, bills, and one thick cream-colored envelope. An invitation. It had arrived 2 days ago. I'd left it there, half hoping she'd open it herself. Of course, she hadn't. I stood, walked over, and picked it up. The cardstock was heavy, embossed with our university's crest. My 15-year college reunion. I slid it across the oak table. It came to a stop right next to her plate of untouched pasta. She looked up, her eyes annoyed at the interruption. For a moment, she just stared at the envelope. Then, slowly, she picked it up, her expression shifting from annoyance to something else, something bordering on contempt. She read the invitation, her lips thinning into a tight white line. Thought, maybe we could go. I said, try and keep my voice casual, light. You know, fly back, see the old campus, catch up with some old friends. It could be fun. Elizabeth looked up from the card, and the look she gave me, it was like I had just handed her a bill we couldn't possibly pay. Like I presented her with definitive proof of a failure. A reunion, she said, and the word came out high and thin. A reunion, Stephen? Seriously. She tossed it back on the table. It landed with a soft whack. Why? She continued, her voice dripping with a sarcasm so sharp it could cut. So we can show everyone how content we are? So you can talk about your nice projects and I can tell Janet and Diane all about our nice little suburban life? Is that what you want, Stephen? To fly 3,000 miles just to be pitted? There it was. That word again. Content. To me, it meant stability. It meant peace. To her, it was a 4-letter word. It was a synonym for failure, for stagnation, for giving up. I flinched. The attack wasn't just about the reunion. It was about us. It was about me. She wasn't just declining an invitation. She was rejecting our entire life. The air in the room crackled, the silence from before now replaced by a new, dangerous energy. The fight she'd been scrolling for, the one she'd been itching to have, was finally here. And this time, I wasn't going to just sit back and take it. Pitted? The word hit me like a physical slap. Pitted? What on earth is that supposed to mean, Elizabeth? I snapped back, my own voice rising, finally shedding that nice tone she despised. We have a good life. We have this house, a house you picked. We have 2 cars. We go on vacation. What exactly is there to pity? She laughed. It wasn't a sound of humor. It was cold, bitter, and full of scorn. It was a sound she usually reserved for a client trying to lowball an offer on $1 million property. A good life? She echoed, her eyes flashing. This is adequate, Stephen. It's fine. It's what people settle for. This isn't the life I was supposed to have. This isn't the life I planned for. I recoiled. The life you planned for? What? And I'm the one who messed up that plan. Yes, she shouted, finally surging to her feet. The chair leg scraped violently against the hardwood floor. Yes, you are. You're just satisfied with everything. You're satisfied with your little projects, your nice salary, this nice little neighborhood. You have no drive, no ambition. My jaw tightened. My ambition built the foundation you're standing on, Elizabeth. Don't you dare, she spat. My commission checks pay for half of this. You want to talk about ambition? She was pacing now, a caged animal. I made a mistake, a huge mistake. I should have married Frank. At least he had ambition. At least he wasn't afraid to take risks. There it was, the ghost, the name that had haunted the background of our marriage for 15 years. Frank, her college boyfriend, the one who, in her mind, had gotten away. Frank is a senior vice president in Austin now, you know, she continued, her voice climbing in pitch. He runs an entire division. He didn't just settle. He wouldn't be satisfied with just good. He would have given me the life I deserved. The words hung in the air, echoing in the dining room. It was the ultimate comparison, the final, unforgivable betrayal. She wasn't just unhappy with our life. She was actively, passionately wishing she had built one with another man. She was looking right at me, breathing heavily, her face flushed with rage and with relief. She had finally said it. The one thing you can never, ever take back. And she looked glad she had. He would have given me the life I deserved. Those words just hung there. They vibrated in the air between us. In the past, a statement like that would have sent me into a blind rage. I would have yelled, defended myself, listed my accomplishments, pointed out every financial contribution I'd made. I would have fought back, desperately trying to prove my worth, to prove our worth. But tonight, something different happened. It was like a wire inside me, stretched taut for 15 years. Finally just snapped. The anger didn't come. The defensiveness didn't rise up. Instead, all the fight, all the heat just drained out of me, leaving behind an almost peaceful, icy calm. It was a terrifying clarity. It was a feeling an engineer gets when they look at a blueprint and finally see the single catastrophic flaw that's been missed by everyone, the one that guarantees the entire structure will fail. I stopped seeing the woman I loved. I stopped seeing the mother of, well, we never had children. Another point of contention. I just saw Elizabeth, a person who had built an entire fantasy life in her head, a parallel reality where she was happier, richer, and more fulfilled. And in that fantasy, I was the villain. I was the anchor holding her back, the living embodiment of her great mistake. I looked at her, really looked at her. Her chest was heaving, her eyes still bright with the thrill of her own cruelty. She was waiting for me to break, to yell, to give her the fight she craved. I did something else. I let out a slow breath. You really believe that, don't you? I said. My voice was quiet, perfectly level. It wasn't a question, but a statement of fact. It sounded foreign even to me. She was momentarily thrown by my lack of reaction, but her defiance quickly returned. She crossed her arms, jutting her chin out. Yes, Stephen, I do. That Frank. I continued, my voice still in that same unervingly calm register, was your ticket, that he would have given you this deserved life. He had the guts to want more, she spat. I nodded slowly. Okay. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Elizabeth's eyes narrowed, probably assuming I was going to storm off to the bedroom to pout or look up flights for the reunion by myself. I unlocked the screen, went to my contacts, scrolled past names I hadn't thought about in years, all the way down to D. What are you doing now? She demanded, Googling his net worth to try and make me feel worse. I found the name. Dorothy, Frank's mom. I hadn't called it in over a decade, but I'd never deleted it. No, I said, looking up at her. Well, Frank's not hard to find. I held her gaze, my thumb hovering over the call button. I still have his mother's number. The change in her was instantaneous. It was like I'd flipped a switch. The defiant, self-righteous woman who had been screaming at me seconds before simply evaporated. In her place was someone I'd never seen before. Her face went pale, a sickly, grayish white. The bravado completely drained from her, replaced by a raw, animal panic. Stephen! Her voice was a hoarse whisper. Stephen, what are you doing? Don't be childish. I just looked at her, my thumb still hovering over the button. Childish? You're the one who brought him up. You're the one convinced he was the answer to all your problems. Let's find out. Let's see if he's been pining for you for 15 years. Don't you dare call her. Stephen, hang up. Hang up the phone, she half screamed, lunging across the table, trying to grab a phone from my hand. I was faster. I pulled it back, stood up, and hit the call button. And then, just to make sure she didn't miss a single solitary word, I pressed the speakerphone icon. The room was suddenly filled with the loud, artificial sound of phone ringing. Each ring seemed to echo the pounding in my own chest. One ring. Elizabeth stood frozen, her hand still outstretched, her mouth open. 2 rings. She looked like she was going to be sick. On the 3rd ring, it clicked. A voice, familiar and kind, crackled through the speaker. Hello. I saw Elizabeth suck in a ragged breath, her hand flying to her mouth. Hi, Dorothy. I said, my voice still holding that impossible, icy calm. It's Stephen, Elizabeth's husband. There was a pause on the other end. I could picture her, Dorothy, in her kitchen in Austin, a kind woman who had always sent us a Christmas card, even after Frank and Elizabeth had broken up, long before Elizabeth and I were even a serious thing. Stephen, she replied, her voice warming with surprise. What a wonderful surprise. How are you, dear? How is Elizabeth? It's been ages. We're fine, Dorothy, I said. Thank you for asking. I took a breath. There was no point in small talk. The scalpel was out. It was time to make the cut. I'm really sorry to call you like this, especially so late. But Elizabeth and I were just sitting here, talking about the old days, from college. I glanced at Elizabeth. She was shaking her head violently, her eyes wide with terror, silently pleading with me. Stop. I didn't. And Well, I continued. She was just mentioning how she feels she made a mistake, how she feels she should have married Frank. The silence that followed my words was absolute. It was a vacuum. I could hear the electric hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock on the wall, the sound of Elizabeth's shallow, ragged breathing. She was staring at the phone on the table like it was a venomous snake poised to strike. Her face was a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. She knew, in that instant, that I had just detonated a bomb, and we were all just waiting for the shrapnel. On the other end of the line, Dorothy was quiet for a long, agonizing moment. I could picture her processing what I just said, that her son's ex-girlfriend, now married to another man, was openly regretting not marrying him. Then, a sound crackled through the speaker. It wasn't sympathy. It wasn't confusion. It was a laugh. But it wasn't the warm, kind laugh I remembered. This was a dry, brittle, humorless sound. It was short and sharp like a bark. It was a laugh of someone who knows a secret, a dark, private joke. "Oh, Stephen," she said, and her voice, God, her voice. All the warmth from her initial greeting was gone, replaced by an icy, pitying tone. But the pity wasn't for Elizabeth. It was for me. "Oh, honey," she said again, drawing the word out. "You're calling me about that?" Elizabeth made a small, choking sound, as if she'd been punched in the gut. I'm sorry to put you in this position, Dorothy," I said, my own voice wavering slightly for the first time. The sheer bitterness in her laugh had shaken me. No, Dorothy said, cutting me off. Her tone was firm now, businesslike. "You're not putting me in any position. But I think you and I think Elizabeth have this whole picture terribly, terribly wrong." She paused, and I could hear her take a deep, steadying breath, like she was deciding just how much poison to administer. "Stephen, are you too? Have you been having problems?" I glanced at Elizabeth. Her eyes were squeezed shut, as if she could make this all go away by simply not looking. "You could say that," I replied, my voice flat. "I see," Dorothy said. "And she's holding up Frank as the prize she missed out on? The golden boy." "That's the general idea," I said. Another one of those cold, sharp laughs. "Oh, honey, that is something else." Her voice dropped, becoming conspiratorial, deadly serious. "Listen to me, Stephen. You're a good man. You were always a good man. Let me tell you something about Frank. Let me tell you what Frank really thought about your wife." I held my breath. Elizabeth's eyes snapped open, wide and fixed on the phone. She was no longer just panicked. She was cornered. "Frank," Dorothy continued, her voice sharp as glass. "Let me tell you something about Frank. He calls me every Sunday. We talk about everything. And yes, he told me that marrying his first wife was a mistake. He admits that freely. But Elizabeth..." She paused, and the silence stretched for just 1, 2, 3 seconds, each one landing like a hammer blow. "He told me, not once, but many times, that getting involved with Elizabeth would have been the single biggest mistake of his entire life." I felt the air leave my lungs in a silent whoosh. It wasn't just a rejection, it was a damnation. Elizabeth, who had been standing frozen, visibly swayed. She gripped the back of her chair, her knuckles turning white. But Dorothy wasn't finished. Oh no, she was just getting started. It was like she'd been holding this in for 15 years, just waiting for someone to ask. "He called her? I'm sorry to say this to you, Stephen, I truly am, but he said she was the most manipulative, deeply materialistic person he had ever known. He said her entire personality was a negotiation, always trying to see what she could get from people. He said it was exhausting, that he felt like he was constantly being sized up, like he was an asset she was evaluating." My God, I stared at Elizabeth. Her face had just crumpled. The color was gone. Her skin looked like wet paper. She was seeing her entire fantasy life, her entire alternate reality, being systematically dismantled, brick by brick, by the one person whose opinion she actually cared about. "He still talks about it," Dorothy added, her voice relentless. "When he meets a new woman, or when one of his friends at the firm starts dating someone who seems a little too ambitious. He uses Elizabeth as the warning. He tells them, be careful, Don't get tangled up with Elizabeth. He still actively warns his new colleagues about her. By name. She took one final breath, this one sounding almost weary, like the telling had exhausted her. Stephen, he thanks God. He thanks God every day that he dodged that bullet. His words, not mine. Dodge that bullet. Dodge that bullet. The words echoed in the dead silent room, stark and brutal. Dorothy had finished. There was nothing more to say. The entire, carefully constructed fantasy that my wife had used as a weapon against me for 15 years had just been executed live on speakerphone. There was a long, hollow silence. I could hear Dorothy breathing on the other end, waiting. I finally looked at Elizabeth. Her face was gone. The woman I knew, the angry, defiant, ambitious, sarcastic woman, had vanished. The person standing there was a complete stranger. She was ashen, her mouth hanging slightly open. Her eyes, which had been wide with terror, were now empty, glazed over. She looked like she'd been struck by lightning. She looked quite simply shattered. All the air, all the fight, all the her, had been vacuumed out, leaving just this empty shell, clutching the back of a dining room chair to stay upright. I felt nothing, no victory, no I told you so, no satisfaction, just a profound, hollow ache, a deep, cold, surgical sadness. The truth I wanted was finally out, but it didn't feel like a win. It felt like an autopsy. I lifted the phone, my hand feeling heavy, disconnected from my arm. I pressed the speakerphone button, cutting off the sound from the room, and brought the receiver to my ear. Dorothy, I murmured, my own voice sounding rough, distant. Thank you. I'm sorry to have bothered you with this. Truly. You take care of yourself, Stephen, she replied, her voice soft now, almost mournful. You always were a good man. Then she hung up. I lowered the phone and placed it screen down on the table. The silence rushed back in, heavier than before. Elizabeth hadn't moved. She was just staring, not at me, but through me, at the wall, at the life she thought she'd had, the one that had just been revealed as a complete and utter lie. She hadn't just been rejected by Frank. She had been his cautionary tale. She made a small sound, a tiny, strangled gasp, like someone coming up for air after nearly drowning. And then she moved. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't throw anything. She didn't try to explain or apologize. She just turned. Her movements were stiff, robotic. She walked out of the dining room, her footsteps unnaturally quiet on the hardwood floor. I watched her go. She walked past the entrance to our bedroom, my bedroom, I realized, and continued down the hallway to the very end, to the guest room. I stood there listening. I heard the door swing shut, not with a slam, but with a soft, final thud. And then, in the suffocating quiet of the house, I heard the distinct, sharp, metallic click of the deadbolt locking from the inside. The click of the lock was so quiet, yet it was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. It was a sound of finality, a door shutting, yes, but also a book closing, a chapter ending, a life over. I stood alone in the dining room for a long time. I don't know how long. 5 minutes? 20? Time had lost its shape. The house was utterly still. All I could hear was the hum of the refrigerator and the faint ringing in my own ears. I looked down at the table, at the 2 plates of expensive, cold pasta salad, at the 2 half-empty glasses of water. It was a perfect portrait of a life interrupted, a snapshot of our marriage. Looked good on the surface, but underneath it was cold, untouched, and deeply unsatisfying. There was no victory. I had wanted, what had I wanted? For her to see me, to appreciate the life we had, to finally, stop chasing a ghost? Well, the ghost was gone, but it hadn't been exorcised. It had been murdered, and in its place there was just this vast, hollow ache, a profound emptiness that settled deep in my chest. I realized I hadn't just destroyed her fantasy. I had destroyed the one thing that had been holding our marriage together, as toxic as it was. Her resentment, her belief that she had settled for me. That was our marriage. It was the engine, and I had just poured sand in it. I sank back into my chair. The wood felt hard and cold. I looked at her empty seat, at the napkin she'd thrown down in anger, and the real, devastating truth finally crystallized in my mind. All these years, I had lived under the shadow of being her second choice. The nice guy, the safe bet. The consolation prize she reluctantly accepted when the grand prize, Frank, got away. I had spent 15 years trying to measure up to a phantom, trying to prove that I was, in fact, enough, but that was the biggest lie of all. I wasn't her second choice. I wasn't even a choice. According to Dorothy, Frank had seen her for exactly what she was. He hadn't just gotten away. He had run. He had run, and he had warned others to run, too. I was the one who didn't run. I was the one who hadn't seen it. I was the one who had stayed. I wasn't her consolation prize. She was mine. I had married a woman who, in her heart, despised me because I wasn't another man, a man who, it turned out, had despised her all along. The entire foundation of our life together wasn't just built on a lie. It was built on a delusion. I sat there in the dark, cold dining room, and for the first time, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I just felt done. Utterly and completely done. There was no coming back from this. You can't rebuild a structure when you discover the concrete itself was mixed with poison. I never went to bed. I don't think I moved from that dining room chair for hours. I watched the shadows in the room merge into a solid, impenetrable black, and then slowly watched the black fade into a cold, unforgiving gray. The sun came up. It cast long, sharp stripes of light across the kitchen floor, illuminating the specks of dust in the air. The house was more quiet. I hadn't heard a single sound from the guest room. No pacing. No sobbing. Nothing. Around 7 a.m., I heard it, the faint shink of the deadbolt sliding back. I didn't turn. I just sat there, listening, my muscles stiff and aching. I heard the door creak open. I heard her footsteps. They weren't the confident, sharp click-clack of her heels on the hardwood. The sound of the real estate agent ready to close a deal. They were soft, shuffling. The sound of bare feet on a cold floor, hesitant. I heard her go into my bedroom. A closet door slid open. The rasp of a zipper. A minute later, she appeared in the kitchen doorway, pulling a small, black roller suitcase. She wouldn't look at me. She couldn't. Her eyes were fixed on the floor, on the handle of her bag, on anything but the man who had been the sole audience to her life's most profound humiliation. Her face was a wreck. It was swollen, blotchy, and pale, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy. She had been crying, just not where I could hear her. She looked small. She started. Her voice was a dry, broken rasp. She had to swallow, wincing, before she could speak again. I'm going to my sister's, to Brenda's house. I just nodded, once, slowly. There was nothing to say. The anger was gone. The hurt was gone. There was just this vast, cold, empty space where our marriage used to be. She took a hesitant step toward the coffee maker, probably acting on 15 years of pure mechanical habit. I stood up. She flinched, a physical, full-body recoil, as if she expected me to finally yell, to finally strike. I didn't. I just walked past her to the sink. I turned on the tap and held my left hand under the cold, running water, soap in my fingers. Then, slowly, methodically, I twisted my wedding ring. It caught on the knuckle, resisting for a moment, a 15-year habit. I pulled it off. It felt unnaturally heavy in my palm. I turned off the water. I didn't hand the ring to her. I walked to the counter, right next to the coffee maker, and placed it on the cold, black granite. The clink of the gold on the stone was tiny, but it was the loudest sound in the world. I'm done being the consolation prize, Elizabeth, I said. My voice was as quiet as hers, but it wasn't broken. It was just finished. Call me when you found a lawyer. She squeezed her eyes shut, a single, fresh tear tracing a path down her swollen cheek. She didn't say a word. She didn't argue. She didn't plead. She just zipped up her jacket, grabbed the extended handle of her suitcase, and walked out the front door, leaving the ring sitting there, glinting in the cold morning light.